Hello there. This is for week number 31. Um, Before I begin this week's topic, I just like to say that if you noticed, I uploaded two videos, this video and the previous week. I did make the previous week's video last week, but because it was a busy week, I forgot to upload it. So, my week 30 topic on the Iroquois Confederacy will be uploaded today, and this video will be uploaded today for week 31. This is for the week of September 1st to the 7th. Okay. For week 31, I am going to talk about the Boston Massacre. I'm just going to go into a few of the main points of the Boston Massacre. I'm not going to go over the whole thing like I typically don't do on my weekly history topics. There's just too much information to cover. So I'm just going to go over the basics of it. First, as you know, or you should know, the British have imposed tons of taxes on the colonialists. This causes tension between them, especially in certain areas like Philadelphia, Boston, New York, places like that, where there's a lot of colonial people. Those are the places where you have the most hostility in colonial America. What happens is that of course, in the early 1770s, the British get rid of some of the taxes, except for a few taxes, here and there, like tea. I think they still have sugar at this point, and other stuff like that. But there's other stuff too that's not so good. In this upheaval, I should say, there is a regiment sent by the British to go to this one area in Massachusetts, Boston, to basically keep order throughout the city and make sure nothing goes wrong. So what the King and Parliament do is they send a regiment of British troops to basically go secure Boston and make sure nothing wrong happens. Now, to the colonialists in Boston, Massachusetts, however, this is not something they see as protection. They see this as, wait, the Crown and Parliament are sending British regulars to Boston without our say and permission. That seems a little tyrannical to us, and that shows that they don't trust us. So you have a growing strife between the British soldiers that have been sent to Boston to keep order and the Bostonians that see this as an infringement as their rights as British citizens. What happens in early 1770 in March, a group of people, I would say a mob, of what they call themselves the Liberty Boys, they call themselves. And what they did is they sort of egged them on from the report of the British officer, Captain, what was his name? Preston, that's it. Captain Preston. He was in charge of the British soldiers to keep Boston in check and stuff like that, so nothing wrong happens. And these Bostonians, because there was still snow in March, in Boston. They would take snow, pile it up in snowballs, and they would keep throwing it at the British soldiers and kind of, taunting them, egging them on, basically, and kind of getting them upset. What happened is, after so many snowballs were thrown and so many Bostonians yelling at them, one of the British soldiers that was there opened fire on them. And after one soldier opened fire, even though the commander, Captain Preston, told them to hold their fire unless someone tries to, unless the protesters have a weapon. He said to his men, supposedly, men don't fire unless fired upon. But with all this hostility, and they were egging them on, and with snowballs and all that other stuff, one of the British regulars that was there took it upon himself to fire and defend himself, and that basically caused the rest of the protesters to go into a frenzy. And what happened was, according to the British officers and soldiers there, to protect themselves, they had to aim upon the crowd and fire. Now, that's the British side of the story. The American side of the story, however, is that there were these colonialists that were patriots, just trying to assert their rights, and their rights were denied and they were fired upon. What happens then is the colonial government in Boston, they were to bring charges up on the British soldiers who fired. So a trial is set up, and the British soldiers have a well-known lawyer from Boston who will eventually in the future become the second president of the United States, John Adams. He becomes the lawyer of the British officers, of the British soldiers, I should say, who are defending themselves in colonial court, basically. What happens is the charges, as far as the colonial court, rule in favor of the protesters, but what the British Parliament does is it kind of ignores the colonial lawmakers and says, it says basically, this feeling needs to be handled at the higher government level because they were British soldiers. So we are going to disclose, basically ignore what the Colonial Assembly did in their trial, and take the British officers who fired upon the crowd back to Great Britain to hold them for trial there. And they did so, and of course the British back in Britain acquitted them of all charges. This really inflamed the colonists even further. Now, one of the major points about the Boston Massacre you should know is the role of one future founding father / President, John Adams. As I mentioned before, he was a lawyer in Boston, and he was the lawyer of the British troops who fired upon the crowd. On top of that, he was also a witness to the actual massacre. Even though he himself wasn't shot or involved with the protests and stuff like that, he saw what happened that night because he was walking around in Boston that night. That happened. So anyway, this was just an overview of the Boston Massacre. I know, like most topics I say, there's tons more I can go over, but I'm not going to go into everything. So that's just a small snippet of the Boston Massacre, and this really starts to fuel the flames of revolution and problems in North America, mainly British North America.